started.
Okay.
So welcome everyone to WSI's Digital Power Hour series. Today's webinar is entitled Expert's Guide to Flushing Your Website Budget Down the Toilet. My name is Cheryl Baldwin. I'm the Director of Marketing Communications here at WSI Corporate, and I will be your host today. I just want to go through a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Everyone has been muted. And so if you do have any questions, please just type them into the question box. We will be having a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. And this webinar, as I just mentioned, is being recorded. So don't worry if you miss on something. You will be able to listen to it again after the webinar has been completed, and the WSI consultant or staff member that referred you to this webinar will provide you with the recording. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. So joining me to present and talk about how to ensure you actually really don't flush your website budget down the toilet is Chuck Bankoff. And Chuck's a WSI Internet consultant based in California in the U.S. And as you can see here, he has a pretty extensive background. He has over 14 years of experience in the digital industry. He's an experienced international speaker and author, and he actually penned the chapter on landing page optimization in our book entitled Digital Minds. And I do know that, I mean, along with all his certifications and awards, he's pretty qualified to speak to you about website management today and how you can make sure that you're maximizing your website budget effectively. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Chuck to take it over.
You don't want to talk about WSI?
Oh, sorry. So yeah, I guess before we get started, I will just do a little bit of a plug on us. So hopefully you are familiar with WSI if you're here today. If not, then here's a little bit of our credentials. We are a global leader in digital marketing, and we do have a global presence across the world. So we're able to have a large extensive knowledge across the world that allows us to provide some really great results to local businesses of all sizes. And so we are headquartered in Toronto, Canada, but as Chuck is evidence and our consultant base is evidence, we're global. So Chuck, I guess I'll pass it over to you to get started.
All right. Well, thanks, Cheryl. And hi, everyone, depending on good morning or good evening, wherever you are. I know this is going out, pretty much worldwide here. I just want to, before I get started, kind of give you a little background on how this presentation came to being. I've been working with WSI since 1999, late 1999, and we started off, WSI did, as primarily a website development company. Now, since then, websites have just become one of the ingredients in the overall, digital marketing aspect of what WSI is all about, what we present. But make no mistake about it, website development is still a key ingredient. We can drive very highly qualified targeted traffic to a bad website, and you're not going to get any more results than having no traffic. So, website development is still a key ingredient of what we do, right? And so I was going on vacation. I was on a flight over to Europe, and after about my 5th or 6th movie, I got a little bored, and I started just kind of thinking about all the things that our clients have inadvertently done to kind of shoot themselves in the foot, and waste time and budget. Now, these things that they're certainly not intentional. It's just because they don't know the process of what we do when we develop a website, and why should they? And there are certain patterns I started to detect, over and over again, year after year. And so I just started jotting them down. And, I was thinking that, well, it's easy to tell you how to do things right. In fact, the Internet is full of helpful tips on how to do things right. You know what's been missing? A manual on how to do things wrong. So I'm your guy, right? And by the way, I'm not above sarcasm to make my point. And so I broke this down into several different lessons. We'll just call them lessons, okay? And the first one is putting it on autopilot, right? So you as a client, as a business owner, you have your business to attend to. I'm sure what you would probably want to do, and really should want to do, is like let someone else just take charge. You guys are the professionals. You guys build the website. Well, if you're looking to shed some of that unwanted cash, go ahead and take advantage of our telepathic powers and let us do all your thinking for you. It doesn't really work that way, right? We can't build a website in a vacuum. Even the best developers can't work in a vacuum and come up with an end product that properly represents your brand without your input. Okay, I'll give you an example, an actual story. This went back several years ago, and a client of mine said, "Look, I am aesthetically impaired." That was his words. In other words, he had no sense of aesthetics or design or anything like that. And he goes, you guys are the experts. I'm sure whatever you guys will do, I will love. And I kept trying to prompt him into giving me some hint, some sense of direction, so that we can put together what we call the creative brief on him. His likes and dislikes, pointing us to examples of websites out there that he thought would be appropriate. And so we have this initial feedback we usually do, back and forth, a dialogue with our client, so that we create this, what we call a creative brief, that our graphic team looks at and they go, okay, so we understand what this guy's tastes are, and combined with our knowledge of how to design websites for a specific target market, we can make everybody happy. But he didn't give us any of that, right? And so, we just went for it ourselves, and my graphics team came back with seriously just an ass-kicking comp. It would rarely, a comp is like a picture of what the website would look like. It's not coded or anything. It's a picture of a website, not a website. And I'm thinking, oh, he's going to love this, right? And so my development team was all proud, and they wanted their pat on the back, which I gave to them. And so I call up the client, and he's looking at the image while we're talking over the phone. I hear nothing but silence. All right, Dave, you still there? Yeah. Well, what do you think? He goes, I don't know. It just doesn't speak to me. It doesn't speak to you? Yeah, go to this website over here. And he gives me a URL of a website. And we go to there, and he goes, you know what? This is what I like about this and this and this. And he says, well, let's go over this website here. Here's something I like about this guy's website, right? And basically, at this point, he is giving me everything I asked for in the first place, right? So we had to go back to the drawing board, redid the website based on what we now have, a creative brief, nailed it, just nailed it the first time. What it did was it wasted a good week of time, some of our resources, because he didn't give us that initial feedback. He put us on autopilot when he could have actually been contributing and moving the project along and getting what he wants. So that's kind of a failure mode, is to just kick it over to our side of the wall without any communication, without any participation, right? So it's pretty much paramount that you have a say in what your final product is going to look like. Okay, lesson number 2. Okay, never respond right away. Don't spoil your development team by immediately responding to their questions or supplying thoughtful feedback. That way you can avoid becoming their #1 priority. Okay, what you need to know is that while waiting for your feedback, your project is probably on hold. Okay, developers, we can't schedule the next step in your project because sometimes these things are done linear, right? Some things are done in parallel, but some things are done sequentially. And if we're waiting for feedback, we are probably have the project just on hold while we're working on something else, okay? While that project is on hold, other projects are slipping in. It's not like we give you feedback, we request feedback on Monday and we schedule to work on it on Tuesday, because we don't know if you're going to get back to us by Tuesday, right? So if you wait, say, 3 days, right, then we don't necessarily start on that 3rd day when you give us feedback. We schedule it back in. Maybe we get to it the same day. Maybe it's a day or 2 days later. So what you have to understand is if you wait 3 days to give us feedback, you probably lost a full work week. And these weeks start adding up, right? So if I tell a client, like, generally we can have the whole project done in 6 weeks, well, I know it won't necessarily happen unless a client actually works with us and gives us the feedback. Another failure mode is giving us partial feedback, right? So we show you, say, a creative comp or whatever questions we ask, and say we ask 4 questions. And you give us good quality answers to 3 of them. And then maybe only a partial answer to the 4th, or you don't answer or something like that. That still might be something crucial that we need to know before we can, re-engage with the project, okay? So if you really want to help yourself move this project along quickly, right, take a few minutes out of your busy day when your developer asks you some questions, respond to them, because 5 minutes of your time could save you a week in development time. It could actually do that. So really it's imperative that good quality feedback, just bite the bullet, spend 5 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it takes, review things, give us good feedback, and then it's off of your plate and back onto ours. Okay, lesson number 3, don't test it yourself, right? Why should you? After all, we're the professionals, and given our industry requirement for telepathy, you can be assured that everything will work just like it did in your head. Well, doesn't necessarily work that way. Your developer, we, are absolutely responsible for making sure that everything works flawless. That's our job. That's what you pay for, okay? Doesn't mean it's going to work the way it did in your head, though, okay? We can only develop what we think you want, not necessarily what you really want, right? So a couple of examples, and these are simple ones, easily changed and fixable, but nonetheless, you might overlook them. So for an example, it might be links, on your, say, from whatever page, your home page, that links to other pages, not your main navigation, but, just hyperlinks, text that links, you're talking about a certain topic, you link to a page here or a website there or something like that. Unless those are defined, then we may miss it, right? Or we may think it goes to one page when you really think it should go to a different page, right? Just little stuff like that. And unless you click on that link, we think we did it right. Another example might be e-commerce, right? There's a whole process with e-commerce, right? E-commerce is a complex module, right? There's tax, there's shipping, there's what they call multi-variables, which are, if you buy a shirt, it could be small, medium, large, red, yellow, blue. Even though we test it out to make sure everything seems to be flowing smooth, you should test it out too as your customer. What would your customer's experience be, right? Your perception of how your customer should react to the flow may be a little different than ours, right? So all I'm saying is test these things out yourself. If I get a note 2 months later that, hey, this link goes over here, it's supposed to go over there, that tells me you didn't even try, you didn't even look at your own website. You didn't even play around with it, okay? So for everyone's benefit, to expedite and make sure that the website is clean the way you want, test it yourself. Spend a few moments. You only have to do it periodically, and then, eventually you have your finished product. Okay, so lesson number 4, something I call management by committee, right? Now, this is a big issue on our end. Typically, everyone has an opinion. If you're part of a committee to review things, to come up with concepts regarding the direction of the website, if you're called upon for that, psychologically, you are probably going to want to throw in your 2 cents because you were invited into this committee. They expect production out of you. They expect ideas, right? That's good. I mean, it's the philosophy of, none of us are as smart as all of us. That's a good idea. But the person who is in charge of the project on your end, whether it's you or a marketing director, has to take charge of that, of filtering out the noise, right? So you might think everyone is saying, hey, we should do this, and then you try and put everything together, and now you're trying to build a horse, and you come up with a camel, okay? Because it, reflects everyone's little bits and pieces, right? So what you have to do is filter out the noise, take charge, thank everyone for their suggestions, but keep your eye on the task. When you communicate with us, you have your committee, right? We should only have one point of contact, and the decisions on your end should have already been made, so we can take one set of decisions, okay? what do we got? Lesson number 5. Trickle your changes in one at a time. I mean, you wouldn't want to overwhelm your design team by letting them organize the project all at once. I mean, this way, they can have 10 or 20 miniature projects to manage instead of just one. Okay. Very little affects the development time of a project like a constant stream of never-ending updates. Nothing wrong with updates and fine-tuning, but trickling them in one at a time is probably the single biggest time suck that we face. All right? It affects quality. It affects development time. What you probably don't know behind the scenes is that there is essentially a minimal amount of non-value-added time that goes into each round of changes. There's project management time. There's communication time between us, uploading, downloading, testing, right? It often takes about the same amount of time to do 5 changes, 6 changes, as it does to make a single change, right? Because it's all the non-value-added time gets amortized into multiple changes. So I will tell you the single best way to review the progress on your web project efficiently is to bundle your changes, all right? You're not doing anyone a favor by, in the morning giving us one change, in the afternoon saying, hey, I found this, and then, take your time, be as picky as you like. Now is the time to be picky and look at, every little aspect. Bundle those changes up in one shot. We don't want those. We call those rounds, right? Sometimes development companies will limit you to a finite amount of not changes, not a finite amount of changes, but a finite amount of rounds. And there can be any number of changes within a round, okay? So bundling those changes, it's going to make things run so much smoother, and your development time will go so much faster. Okay, lesson number 6, do it yourself. After all, you have plenty of time to learn about marketing, design, and coding. What do you think all those dummies books are for anyway? Everyone loves that homemade look, and in just a few short months of working on it part-time, presto, you got something that kind of sort of looks like a website, right? Now, I'm being a little facetious there. Some people have a better sense of design, marketing functionality than others, and on occasions I've seen some pretty good websites that are built using rudimentary platforms by a layman, but I don't see them that often, right? I suppose if you have more time than money, you might want to take on the challenge, but then you aren't really working on other aspects of your business, and honestly, you probably won't get the same professional results. Depends on the level of your business, but I am a firm believer, obviously this is self-serving, that your website is a window, it is your brand, it's the one thing that is open to everyone, everywhere. Take some time, maybe put a little money into it, do it right, because it's the one thing that it's the face of your business that is accessible everywhere, right? Do it right. So if you can do it yourself, fine, but generally speaking, most people don't get the same results. They may like what they see, it's their baby, it looks good to them, but looking good is not the same as being good in terms of websites. There are a lot of great looking websites out there that don't get any leads, or they're just not serving the function which they were originally intended. All right, lesson number 7, use the cheapest technology available, right? So you don't want to offend your customers with one of those fancy user-friendly websites that scream, look at me, I take my company seriously. What better way to showcase your thriftiness than to cut corners on the company website? Okay. Just like everything else on the planet, you get what you pay for. Will that e-commerce platform handle those multivariables and taxes and shipping? Will that simple informational website you want to build and you just doing it for leads show up on the search engine? Is it going to show up on the search engine because you picked something that doesn't have user-friendly URLs? What about weak support, clunky editors? For example, right now I'm working with a client that she had the good sense. She tried to use one of these website building platforms. I think it was web.com, very rudimentary, and she spent a little time on it, and she was smart enough to go, this is not looking good, right? And she contacted us, and so we decided on a platform to build the website on. We decided on something called eFusion. It's an Adobe product. WSI, we use that extensively because she needed showcase a lot of photos, right? And she goes, well, can't we keep it on the same platform because I'm only paying like $6 a month for hosting? And I think, you know, it was for like $10 more a month. We could put it on a much nicer platform. The difference is she's going to constantly be changing photos. She'd have to upload those photos manually using FTP and some of the same things that we do. We'd have to actually train her to do a little bit of being a web developer, as opposed to $10 a month where she'd have a user-friendly thing she can just upload. Okay, and so for the sake of what's that, $120 a year, she's going to eat up a lot more than $120 worth of her time. Okay, so it's not necessarily the cheapest technology. I know that's how I titled the slide. It's really using the appropriate technology, right? Don't spend any more than you need, but don't spend any less than you need either. Okay, lesson number 8. Delegate it to an intern, right? Or whoever's laying around without anything to do, an administrator or someone who isn't busy at the moment. Now all of a sudden, go to web.com or go to Amazon, not Amazon, go to GoDaddy and, build a website. That's probably not the smartest thing to do. There's kind of a misconception that, digital marketing is about technology. No, it's not. It's about marketing. It's about business, and it's about representing your brand in the finest possible light. Seriously, I don't think there's a person on this call who can't get some sort of do-it-yourself website builder program and put something out that sort of looks like, like a website. This is something you can delegate to an intern, administrator who isn't busy at the moment, and they can just paste a couple of pictures of 2 business people shaking hands, and presto, you have a website. But even if you delegate your website development to someone on your staff, look for someone who knows the business. That's the key, not someone who knows websites or knows something about Twitter or something like that. The target, they have to know something about the target market and have an aptitude for marketing. And I don't think, like the picture of this kid here, he probably can tweet like no one's business, but do you think he really has an aptitude for business or marketing? That's what the website, web development is about. It's about business. It's not about the technology, right? And so you got to make sure this, is delegated to someone who actually understands the business. Now, check this out. This, this is the product of an intern. This was, after the crash of Asiana Flight in 214, that happened, about a year ago, I guess, there was an intern with the National Transportation Safety Board who he confirmed 4 fake racist names of the pilots to television station it was KTVU, which subsequently they read them live on air. To the intern, this was hilarious, right? To the people around him with real jobs, it made them look like fools, right? And obviously he was, he was fired as an intern. He didn't have much of a future there. But my intention is not to make light of this or to condone it as being funny, but to illustrate how dangerous it is to hand over something public, like that represents your company, like a website or your social media work, to someone who is not truly familiar with the company's image and their best business practice and has a certain degree of maturity and common sense and really knows what your company's goals are. Okay. All right, so lesson number 9, make it clear you have no budget. Nothing incentivizes web developers to do the very best work like dropping subtle hints about your willingness to make your website a low priority in your business. Right? Most good development companies can scale their services to meet your budget. Essentially, that means if you drop hints that you have a minimal budget, most developers will accommodate you with a no-frills quote and a no-frills result. There's nothing wrong with that if that meets both your budgetary needs and it meets your actual needs. But keep in mind, a 15-page website for $1,500 will most likely not be the same as a 15-page website for $5,000. The developer will most likely scale down the attention to details on the graphics and content and planning and to meet your budget, right? So, you may think that, well, if I tell them I have a big budget, they're just going to give me the same product that I would get if I told them I had a lower budget. Yeah, I suppose that's possible. Most reputable firms really want to do a good job, and to do a good job, they need the raw materials. The raw materials or the budget they have to work with. to make suggestions, so forth. My suggestion is to just have an honest discussion of, number one, what your needs are, and maybe ask, what's the typical range for something, like this, right? And have that discussion up front, but dropping subtle hints that, I don't have much money, but I need to do this. Well, if I'm on the phone with you and you say I don't have much money, my mind immediately shifts to, okay, what can I do to accommodate this person without much money? So the solution that I am formulating in my mind as we're talking is going to be a lower end solution because I think that's all, you can afford, and I want to accommodate you, okay? So nothing wrong with negotiating or anything like that, or just, having that honest discussion. But, if you think that you're going to get the same product for less money, it doesn't really work that way. You'll probably get a good quality product within the realm of whatever, the fees you ultimately decide on. Okay, so lesson number 10. Squeeze 10 pounds of crap into a 5-pound bag. Look, people like looking at things, so take the opportunity to jam-pack each page full of visually stimulating eye candy. That way they'll appreciate, what they're looking for if they ever find it. And by the way, I like that that yellow easy vets navigation in the middle. This is some easy navigation, isn't it? Right? People don't read on the internet, they scan. They see headlines, they see graphics, they see bullet points. If they like what they see, then they'll read. And I don't know how else to describe this to you, but they are a lot less interested in you than you are in you, right? They're not going to sit there and read through an information dump, fight through convoluted navigation to find what they're looking for. They're not dedicated to you. They'll just go to the next person on search results if they have, they can find their stuff quicker. It's easy. You're just one click away from losing a client, okay, and going to your competitors. Every page on your website should have a specific goal, including your home page. Just do not jam-pack your website pages with distracting graphics and competing options. Don't do an information dump and expect the consumer to sort it out for themselves. Every page should have, think of every page as a landing page with a specific call to action and limited predetermined choices of what they can do. The internet is short attention span theater, and every visitor is just one click away from putting you in their rearview mirror. Now, I had a client, I will refrain from using their name because that website is still up. I am proud to say we built the worst website I have ever seen. Right? This client was laid up after an accident, and he's in the hospital, and he drew out his website with the painstaking, on actual paper, painstaking detail, right? He had the whole thing figured out, and, he was told that scrolling is no good. You want everything above the fold. The fold is the point where you have to scroll down to see more of the website, right? And so it was horrible. I tried every way to talk him out of this. So what happened was the website was so jam-packed with things that were flashing and red. Just red, red attracts people's eyes. Well, it does, unless everything on the website is red, and then in case black attracts their eyes, right? And so we did the thing, and I guess you may have to know a little bit about coding here, but one of the words we left the letter off, like the letter E, off of there. We proofread it, right? He found it, right? I put the letter E, my guys put the letter E on there. That one letter tore the website apart, right? It made the rest of the text wrap to the next line, which pushed the picture down, going, that's how crappy this website is. And I remember years later, he says, hey, I know you do a lot of training. Do you ever talk about my website? I said, yeah, Mike, I do. Just like I am now. All right, so where are we? We're at lesson number 11, right? Skip all that search engine stuff, right? So let's go into the premise that it's actually important to show up on the first page of the search engines. The time to start thinking about your search ranking is not after the website is already built. The time to start thinking about it is during the planning process. This is actually a very complex topic. I mean, we've done full webinars just on this topic, but let's just say that just because it looks cool to you doesn't mean it looks cool to the search engines. Technology, structure, and a host of other behind-the-scenes factors are what the search engines are looking for. Optimizing an attractive but poorly built website is generally not the most effective way to do it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't retrofit, make adjustments after the fact, but why not do it right the first time? Example of that is we're working with a client right now, and we're struggling because he worked with another developer, and he does wedding photography. So of course, it's very intensive on imagery, pictures of the wedding. That's what's going to get people to pick up the phone, by seeing these beautiful pictures that he's taken. The entire website had no writing on it. It was all pictures. The only writing was his name and the phone number, right? There was nothing else but pictures. Well, search engines can't pick up on that. They know there's a picture there, but we as human beings can see text on a picture. We can infer what it's about. The search engines just know there's a bunch of JPEGs on it, right? So he didn't even exist to the search engines, right? So he brought it to us to let's optimize it, okay? And yes, we're going through the process, but had they built, his development company that he was working with at the time actually built this properly, making it search engine ready, the technology would have been more appropriate. They would have designed content, writing, text into it, right? So yes, we're successfully working with him, but it's a lot more intensive to do it, in this case, after the fact. So start thinking about the search engine, address it. Don't be afraid to bring that up with your development company. Make sure that even if you're not doing a full search engine optimization program, make sure that it's search engine friendly. So, when you're ready for that, you can hit the ground running. Okay, so lesson number 12, ignore mobile. Okay, what a missed opportunity. All right, I can tell you there is a ridiculously disproportionate amount of mobile users, you're probably all mobile users out there, than there are mobile websites. I mean, it's proportionally, it's ridiculous. What a great opportunity. What a competitive advantage, Ask yourself, have you ever looked at a website on a smartphone or a tablet? How much time do you spend on a website on your smartphone when the website appears to be the size of a postage stamp? Okay, and you have to kind of pinch it open and just move the entire website around as you're reading it. Right? That's not really user-friendly. Right? And search engines have also recognized this and are even giving preference to mobile-enabled websites when they're being searched for from a mobile device. So, for example, if you're being searched on for your keyword term by someone, a potential customer on a desktop, your competitor may be number 1 and you're number 7. Well, wait a minute. Suppose you have a mobile-enabled website and they don't. Now you're being searched on a mobile device like an iPhone or a Droid or something like that, and you have a mobile site, he doesn't. There's a good chance you're number 1 and he's number 7. Now, it doesn't work exactly like that, but the search engines recognize mobile sites and they can differentiate responsive design, mobile sites, and they consider that a better user experience. And given the direction that mobile is going, Google themselves are saying that they predict by the end of this year, 2014, mobile searches will overtake desktop searches, right? And right now is the time to make sure that your website is mobile enabled. Take advantage of it now because it's a true competitive advantage, and it actually is, it's a usability thing for your customers, right? Okay, so we're up to what, lesson 13? Okay, well, just throw something up there for now, right? I've had clients that, for whatever their sense of emergency is, they don't really feel they have the time to dedicate to doing it correctly. They'll get to that later, or there's some sort of marketing initiative that they're doing that they need to have a web presence very quick. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, but, keep in mind, if you don't have time to do it right, where are you going to have time to do it over? Okay, so I guess what my issue is to throw something up there, but still not put the thought into it, right? I think the worst thing to do is to throw a temporary website up there, trying to make it look like a permanent website, so it looks as good as you can make it, right? I think it's probably better to first of all go back to why is it such an emergency to not do this right that we got to get something up there right now? And then 2, let's build this temporary, let's get something up there now website around your rationale for having to do it quickly. Address that problem, right? And, don't make it seem like this is your permanent site. Make it evident that this is something special. Okay, where are we? All right, so lesson number 14, assume that it's easy. Assume that website development is easy. I mean, there are 16-year-old kids out there who can do websites. Well, that part is easy, you want to make sure that your development team knows that you know how easy it is. That way you can trivialize their knowledge and be assured of their very best effort. Okay. Finding images, designing graphics, laying them out in on a page is, it's not in a way that's, that's pleasing to the eye and functionally correct. Using best marketing practice, that isn't just one talent. That's several talents. Sometimes those talents require several input from several people on a team. Best websites are typically built not by individuals unless they're single-purpose websites. But even if you're one of those people who actually have a sense of design, which is probably much rarer than you think, trying to bend any sort of web development platform to your will is a completely different story. Building a website actually it's not hard, right? Building one that does its job it's intended for is hard. It's harder than you think, right? You can use these web development platforms, and you can, in the hands of someone who understands not necessarily the technical aspect, but understands the marketing aspect, you might be able to get some pretty good results. But just don't assume that putting together a top-of-the-line quality website, it may be relatively easy for professionals, but don't assume that those professionals don't have a high degree of knowledge in terms of marketing and technology. I've had clients actually say, well, why don't you just drag this image around over here like it was on a PowerPoint or something, like you can just drag it and move it over. It's not that easy, okay? All right, so lesson number 15, choose your developer base solely on price. After all websites are the same, so shouldn't they all cost the same, right? I mean, all cars are equal, so don't all cars cost the same, right? Okay, I once had a phone call from a guy in a local restaurant, and trust me, this has happened more than once. Like, I actually pick up the phone, or one of my guys picks up the phone, and the first words out were, how much does a website cost? Well, I got a call. I happened to pick up the phone that day, and it's a local restaurant. He introduced himself, said, the restaurant name, and he goes, well, how much does a website cost? And I said, well, I don't know. How much does food cost? And of course, there was silence after that, right? So, I told you I wasn't above sarcasm to make a point, but that's really, websites come in different flavors, just like food does. They come in different degrees of technology and features and attention to detail, just like cars do. Okay, and so what you want to look at is, yes, you have to consider price. Of course, you have a budget, and you have to stay within your budget, but you want to look at, the track record of your developer, right? Look at websites they've actually done. You have to demand to see a portfolio of work they've done over the years. You probably want to know what their experience is, their experience is in terms of marketing and their training, right? And so price is an actual factor. It is, of course, you can't deny that, but you have to temper price with experience as well. So don't just go shopping on price thinking that, hey, I can get the same website because this guy will do it, for $1,000, and this guy's going to do it for, $4,000. Well, you may get something good for $1,000. Will you get the same thing you'd get for $4,000? Maybe, probably not, but maybe. Okay, so finally, this is like one of my big ones here. It's, it's all about you. Make sure that website is all about you. If your customers want a website that works for them, they can go to your competitors. This one is yours, right? I like to think of this as something that needs a little explanation, but the truth is we've had more than a few clients who thought of their websites as monuments to themselves and their own companies, right? Look, you don't pack 10 pounds of crap into a 5-pound bag. You don't do an information dump on your visitors, assuming that they're so interested in you they're going to wade through, reams of information that's not what they're looking for. The website is built for them, for their conveniences, for your purposes. Okay, so work with your designer if they tell you that there's too much information about you. No one. I'll give you an example. Very few people these days care about mission statements. All right, that's just something that just popped in my head now. I mean, that's a very 80s type of thing, and then if everyone put it in missions, nobody cares. I'm being honest with you. Nobody cares. They care what they're looking for. All right. So things about you, let that take a back seat. You have to show your, what you do, the quality, your track record, things like that. But really, you're there. The website should be designed around what your best customer is looking for at the time. Okay. So with that said, I am going to pass that back to Cheryl, and maybe if anyone has any questions, I think we have some time here. We have we got more than 15 minutes actually.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Chuck. We do have some questions here, and maybe just to start off, because there was a couple questions now on what you mentioned landing pages and what the main difference is between a website and a landing page. You might just want to explain that.
Okay, good, great question. It truly is. Well, technically, a landing page is where a visitor lands on the website after clicking on a paid ad, a natural search, and a link from another website, a link from an email. Wherever you land, that's the landing page. But realistically, the landing page is typically a single page that is designed for a single purpose. Okay, so for example, maybe you sell consumer electronics, right? And you have different categories of consumer electronics. You sell GPS units, or you sell those fish finders, or tablets, or things like that. Well, what you don't want to do, if someone is searching for a GPS unit, you don't want to send them to the home page and have them to click on category, subcategory, and kind of narrow it down. You ideally send them to the page about GPS units, and on that page, that's all you talk about, the GPS units, and of course the call to action, which is buy, click on it, and then you go right to the shopping cart, right? So a landing page is something that is designed with a single purpose, a single goal in mind. Okay, it has minimal distractions on it. The home page is what I call the lazy man's landing page. In most industries, doesn't have the best conversion rate. Converting visitors into phone calls and emails and transactions and things like that. So there you go. That's my definition of a landing page.
Great. And maybe just you talked a little bit about it at the end there around search engine optimization, and we have a question on, what makes good text? Not necessarily, making sure it's aimed at the audience, but if you have any insights on, content that Google definitely likes or doesn't like.
Okay, yeah. Now, that's an ever-changing thing what Google likes, but I can make it unequivocally clear that Google and the other search engines are heading in the direction of natural speech. They are doing a very fine job of determining what a web page is about based on synonyms. There's something called latent semantic, something where they can actually take the inference in the search term and the inference on text on a website and match them up and show you the results, right? There have even been cases where people have been ranking #1 for a search term that doesn't actually appear on their website, but it was correct. It was like that was a good search result, right? So my #1 recommendation is write for people, write for human beings, but create a library of search terms, of things that people that you want to get found for, and use that. Use it naturally in your text, right? If you can use it in your headlines, the headlines are typically the larger font size, bold, dark, that precedes the body copy. If you can use it in there, use it in there, but not at the expense of making a funny, looking headline. So number one, write for people. Number two, include your keywords in your copy. Now keep in mind your keywords will be used elsewhere, your title tags and your H1 tags and things like that. That's what your search engine optimization team will do. But really write for people, because the search engines are, with their algorithmic changes over the last 2 years, have really done a good job of weeding out content farms, where it's this what they call spun or recycled content, right? Write original content, write interesting content, and write content that really addresses what it is you want to be found for. Okay?
Great. So I have a question here asking, are different web development tools, WordPress, Joomla, better for different types of websites? Do you have any insights there?
Oh, that is a good question. You got to take them on a one-on-one basis. WordPress is a good one to talk about. It was originally developed as a blog, and quite frankly, I think it's the best blog there is. Well, over time, people have adapted it to build full websites. It's what they call open source code, so a lot of what they call plugins or modules are out there. Some of them are free, some of them you pay for. The problem with WordPress, I'm just using that as an example of some of these open source things, is that nobody really regulates it, okay? So for example, you could write a plugin for WordPress that maybe it's a photo gallery, or maybe it's an e-commerce module or something like that that plugs in, and I can write one and someone else can. There's hundreds of them out there, and it's great. Maybe they're all free. And maybe because individuals are writing them, one person writes one plugin, or another person writes a plugin for a different purpose, but they conflict with each other. So you put that second plugin, and now the first one doesn't work, right? Or you upgrade WordPress to the next version of it. Now none of your modules work, right? Because nobody is actually in control of it. Now, if you're going to use it as a blog, great choice. It's search engine friendly. There's all these different themes out there. So that would be an example of a platform that is used for the right purpose. It was originally intended for a blog. Use it as a blog. Yes, you can use it for a small website. Nothing wrong with it. It has a nice content management system. On the other hand, let's go to the other spectrum. You've got to keep your eyes on, or your developers should do this, on the technology. For example, we just inherited a website that's not old at all. I mean, the thing was built maybe a year ago. We got it from a third-party developer. It was built by a third-party developer. It's written in a coding language called ASP, Active Server Pages. Well, ASP was a Microsoft program that has been discontinued. It's what they call end-of-life. And now things are showing up funny on browsers and things like that. So you want to keep up to date, not you as consumers, but make sure that your website developer is using a current technology that's being supported by the browsers and so forth. So I don't know if that quite answers the question, but I guess if I had to give one answer is, you have to look, what is the purpose of what you're developing the website for, and then apply the proper technology for it. You don't need anything more technical than what you actually need to get the job done. Less moving parts. So that's my answer. I'm sticking with it.
Sounds good. Maybe just quickly, I mean, it's kind of, this is a webinar in its own, but maybe you could just give a couple points. The individual asking, how can I best make my website get more conversions to specific pages? Maybe you just want to share a couple tips there.
More conversions to
how to
traffic?
optimize conversions to your website for specific, like say if you have a form on your website,
Right.
what could you be doing maybe within your website or external of it to get more conversions on that page?
Okay, that is kind of a broad question. What comes to mind is how, people, if we're talking purely conversions, in other words, someone's already on this particular page, you just want to get them to do what you want them to do, which is either pick up the phone and call or fill out the form and submit it, right? There's a couple of things to do, and you're right, Cheryl. This is definitely as a matter of fact, I've done webinars on landing page design to address this, but there's a few things that come to mind. One is there are actual visual cues that will point people to the form. Color, shape, placement on the page. You don't want your form below the fold. You want it right up there towards the top so that people don't have to scroll to see that you have a form. Little things like the submit button, right? Don't use the word submit, right? That's kind of the default. Things like use the button. This is actually a very huge conversion factor, is what the button says. If it says submit, well, there's nothing really wrong with that, but you're losing an opportunity to say stuff like find out more, or do you qualify, or something like that. Is the button benign and gray in color, or is it red and sticks out? A lot of people try to think of the website as a picture, like, oh, look at how nicely the colors match and all that, and they blend in. Well, you don't necessarily want your call to action to blend in. You want it to stand out. Using a color that is not really part of the color palette, of the general website to introduce the form right there on the website. So this is, it's part science and it's part, art. This is, you're right, Cheryl. This is a whole other webinar, but that would be some of my main recommendations, is to make the form and the call to action, not just sticking a form on there. People know that you fill out the form, you're going to submit it, and that's that. But why are they filling out the form? Another thing you can consider is a lot of people don't want to fill out forms because they don't want their name on yet another mailing list, right? Great place to put a link to your privacy policy. No one ever reads a privacy policy, but if you have one, they assume that you're not going to abuse their email, even if that's really not the case, right? So there's just so many factors there. And I think at the end slide, I think it is, I have, maybe it was the beginning slide. If people go to my SlideShare channel, I have a lot of information on landing page design there, and a lot of those things are actually covered. A lot of the questions that you asked so far are covered there, so that might be a resource for it. Okay?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we also have a whole resource section on WSI World too. So like Chuck said, we've actually done webinars on this stuff before. So we've got a lot of content we could share on that. Question around the mobile aspect, because some people have heard about responsive design and maybe what the difference is between a responsive design website and a separate mobile site.
Yeah, that's a real good question, because and it's a very timely question too, because it's very important. One of my slides was ignore mobile. Well, you can't ignore mobile right now, right? So what responsive design is, and probably most of you haven't actually heard the term before, but you've actually witnessed it, is when a website reformats itself based on the size of the screen you're viewing it on. That means actual elements on the page shift around, some of them disappear, that sort of thing. And so, yeah, as you say, you open up a browser like Chrome or Internet Explorer or Firefox, and you're looking at a website, and you can actually drag it. If you drag it, make it smaller and smaller and smaller, the browser window, you can actually, on a responsive design website, you actually start seeing things moving around as you get to certain stages there, until finally you get to the size of your smartphone, and everything is probably down a single column at that point, right? The really good thing about responsive design is just that. Who knows what different size tablets, now they have something called phablets, which are they have part phone, part tablet. These Galaxy ones, they're kind of in between. And so you don't know what sizes ultimately these things are going to be viewed at. So that's really good. Some of the negative parts of responsive design would be, one, they're more expensive because it takes so much more upfront planning to do that. What elements can be viewed on a smaller screen of a smartphone? Well, we can't have that element, so we have to either swap it out or remove it. How is this going to look when we shrink it down? Will it look right on a small device? Well, to make it look right on a small device, we have to reformat it on a full-size desktop. It's actually fairly complex, and it's much more expensive. I believe, well, we do a real good job with it, but we charge a premium because it's, we have to do a lot of upfront planning to make them both look good. Now, that's another part about responsive design. A lot of people are saying, well, in order to do a good responsive design, we have to compromise. So the desktop version doesn't necessarily look as good as it could be because we have to take into consideration what it's going to look like when it shrinks down to the size that's appropriate for a smartphone. So we're kind of compromising the design there. Okay. On the other hand, a separate mobile website, for a smartphone is pretty easy. And keep in mind, people's behavioral patterns are different when they're like on a smartphone versus a desktop. Like they're typically on the go. They're looking for different information, most maybe contact information, a map to get somewhere, tap to call because they're already on a phone and they want to call someone, at your company, that sort of thing. And it's typically a slimmed down, easily navigable version of your desktop website. So we're a toss-up. It depends on the industry. I mean, if, say, it was an airline industry, you don't need the full airline website on a smartphone. If I'm in an airport and I'm looking for my flight or something like that, I want a slimmed down version. I want to find what I want to find. I don't want to navigate through a regular website, even if it was responsive and, I don't need all that navigation. I need specific things, right? So there are a lot of factors that go into why you would use responsive design versus a special mobile version of the website. But, that's the difference. Responsive it's getting a lot of attention, but I think it's got to be used in the right circumstances. So I hope that kind of answers that.
Great. So question here on just once you have your website up, actually maintaining it and keeping it up to date on a regular basis, and what kind of plans should be in place to manage that?
Oh, okay. Well, just like everything else, it depends on what your needs are. So, we have clients that they need the website up there as what we call brochureware. This is what we do. This is how you contact us. And there aren't a lot of changes that go on. I would say, number one, start with good hosting. Right? Your website doesn't do you any good if it's down or if it gets hacked or something like that. So that's a good place to start. Make sure that you're hosting with a reputable company, and your consultant can certainly help you with that. Number two is kind of visualize what kind of changes, routine changes need to be made. I mean, if it's e-commerce site and you're constantly, you got the spring line of products coming in and you got to make all those changes. I mean, you could probably negotiate a kind of a maintenance agreement for things like that. Now, for example, what we do, our typical basic low-end maintenance program is $99 a month, and for that we host the website. We will make sure it's up if there are any issues or anything, setting up emails, and we do an hour, up to an hour of use it or lose it time each month. Right? If you go over, you go over, and you pay for it. But quite frankly, if you go over by a couple of minutes, no one wants to generate an invoice for that. But that would be a typical bare bones basic maintenance program. Other people, if you're not going to opt for that because you don't think that you're going to need, anything going on a monthly basis, find out what the hourly rate is for your developer. I mean, you may only need every quarter you need to do, a couple hours worth of work or something like that. It may be less expensive to pay by the hour, but you really should know what that is, right? I hope that answers that question.
Great. So we are actually just coming up to the hour. So I know there are some questions there that we weren't able to get to, but rest assured, your WSI consultant can definitely answer any of the questions that you did have that we weren't able to get to today. Just to wrap up, I had mentioned actually that Chuck is an author of one of the chapters of our book, so I just wanted to let everyone know that WSI has written a book. It's called Digital Minds, 12 Things Every Business Needs to Know About Digital Marketing. Kind of goes through really some of the important stuff you need to know when you're putting together a digital strategy and specifics within that. And so it is available on Amazon and all the most popular retail suppliers, so check that out. I'd like to just do a general thank you. Maybe Chuck just flipped to the last slide. Great. So we always love to hear feedback on our webinars that we have. We do them monthly, and so we hope that you're a recurring attendee of our monthly series. So let us know. There is a link, and when you do get your kind of thank you for attending email from the person that referred you here, you'll be able to click this link to let us know what you thought of the survey, the webinar. We do have an actual complimentary guide around this this webinar, and so you can definitely download this as well. There is a link for this also, and you can be sure to either contact us at contact@wsiworld.com if you don't have any of these links, just to get the links, or all of these links will definitely be provided to you by your WSI consultant. And also a great infographic that kind of highlights a little bit of what Chuck was talking to. So again, like I said, your WSI consultant can answer any remaining questions you might have and provide you with all of the materials as well as the recording for this webinar. We continue to have webinars every month, so stay tuned for those at our getwsipower.com. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time out of their day for attending, and a special thank you to Chuck for taking time out of his day for sharing his wisdom with us.
Well, thank you, Cheryl. And I didn't really take too much time out of my day because normally I'm still sleeping now. so didn't really put a dent in my day yet. No one is even in the office yet.
Well, great. I hope everyone found this to be informative. And again, we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks for attending.
Thanks, everybody.